We will now hear from 5 top executives and CEOs from global manufacturing companies on the opportunities and challenges within the mechanical insulation industry, including globalization in the industry, projected industry growth, industry consolidation, and much more. It is my pleasure at this time to introduce the moderator of the panel discussion today, Mr. Ron King. Ron is an NIA past president and current consultant. He was awarded NIA's President's Award in 1986 and again in 2001. He's a 50-year veteran of the commercial and industrial insulation industry who has held CEO positions both with a large distribution company and with a specialty insulation contractor. Mr. King currently serves as a consultant to NIA on a variety of educational, outreach, and governmental initiatives, including coordinating Allied Association Alliance partnership activities. Please join in welcoming my good friend, Ron King.
Thank you. Thank you, and don't believe that 50-year-old comment. I'm not that old. We've elected that we're going to speak from our seated positions today to in the interest of time, instead of running back and forth to the podium. So that's why we're all going to remain seated. I would like to add my welcome to everyone and to acknowledge our appreciation to our distinguished panelists for making a commitment to participate in today's panel and our discussion. I want to introduce the panelists. Copies of their bios are on the table at the back of the room, and they're available on the mobile meeting app. I think you will agree we have quite a distinguished panel of executives from leading manufacturers in our industry. Please hold your applause until I complete the introductions of our panelists. Ted Berglund, President and CEO of Diplast Products. Marta Brazzi, President and CEO of the Duna Group. Patrick Matthew, President and CEO of Armacell. Dr. Pawat, CEO and Chairman of Aeroflex USA. Don Young, President and CEO of Aspen Aerogel. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. I'd like to just to give you an idea of how the panel is going to work today. First, I will ask the panelists to make a brief statement about opportunities or challenges that they see within the mechanical insulation industry. Following their statements, I will begin the discussion with questions for each of the panelists on a variety of topics. We will follow those discussions with questions from the audience, so I ask you please to be making notes now of your various questions that you might want to have. You have the opportunity to address your question directly to any one of the panelists, and if it's just a general question, then I will direct it to the panelists. In the interest of allowing as much time as possible for discussion and questions, please hold your applause until the end of today's session. Ted, I would like to ask you, if you would, to begin with the opening comments.
Sure.
Ted Berglund.
I guess it works. And now I understand what bright lights are about when they talk about it, because I can't see a thing out there. I'm Ted Berglund from Diplast Products in Miami, Florida. Welcome to Florida. Ron asked us to comment a little bit for a couple minutes on the challenges and opportunities for our industry. I think the greatest opportunity we have is in the energy area. Insulation is the easiest way and the most effective way, and probably the most financially less painful way of saving energy, whether it be in homes, plants, pipelines, wherever. And that, I think, is our greatest opportunity. By saving energy, we are also very green. If you look at the greenhouse gas effects and things of that nature, maybe not all of us agree with all the press, but it does save carbon. One of our suppliers, Bayer, now Covestro, did a study a couple of years ago about the impact of polyiso insulation on building envelopes. Not what we make, but same sort of material. And depending on the climate, et cetera, the savings, the carbon used, and keep in mind everything we use comes from hydrocarbons, versus the carbon saved in energy was between 10 and 20-fold. In other words, it's just phenomenal. It is a something that we need to promote as an industry. And I think there are greatest opportunities to push things out. I do think we have some challenges in our industry. And I'm not 50 years. I've only been in this for 14 years now. But there's a lack of concern about mechanical insulation. A lack of awareness is what I like to call it. And we need to promote it better as an organization, as individual companies, et cetera. The other thing I've found, even within the industry, there's a lack of knowledge. We're talking at the speech earlier this morning about knowing and having knowledge and being able to be confident about what you say. We need to explain to everybody more about what we do, how we do it, how the materials behave, et cetera, so we can apply the best and get the best results. And once you get the best results, you're in good shape. My personal opinion is I think we have a lack of code drivers. Europe, Marta may comment on this, has much stronger codes than we do, and they require much stricter insulation. In our markets, some other items that are a big concern to me are lack of labor. We've talked about that at NIA quite a bit. I know Kenny focused on it last year in one of his talks. That's a real issue for us to get qualified people, whether it's in the manufacturing environment or an installation environment or the fabrication environment. Doesn't matter. We're having a hard time hiring qualified people in our country. I also think there's a period of political and economic uncertainty, and that certainly affects people's willingness to put insulation in their capital budgets. People have restricted their spending. I think it's short-sighted personally because I think they save a lot of money in the long run. So I think we have great opportunities, but there are challenges for us out there. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Ted. Dr. Pratt, would you go to please next? Yes, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Don. Thank you very much for giving me a chance to talk to all of our same industry today. I'm from Thailand and from Asia, and we have industry in aerofresh in America. From my nearly 40 years of experience and in this industry, especially for mechanical insulation industry, I found that nowadays we have a great opportunity. And we can say that we have a very good future when comparing with many other old-fashioned industry. I think that our industry is still very exciting and going to exist as long as we need to reduce the use of energy. This is very important. And the insulation, nowadays we offer a good market growth around the world because we have an industry that sell our product to more than over 100 countries in the world. So we know a bit in many places, especially in America. Since the 2009 until today, I think the market is growing step and getting much better now. And the industry in this many years, we have a new innovation, a new product for energy conservation. And you know that today, the global warming is very important for our world. So the insulation, we all get a helping hand to reduce the oxygen, the carbon dioxide emission. We all help indirectly to use less energy, less carbon dioxide emission, which is very important for our future. And it's a very exciting in this industry, especially in Asia. As you know that China is one of the countries use a lot of energy because of the population of 1.4 billion, India's 1.1 or 1.2 billion, and our ASEAN, which is 600 million, which totally is nearly 40% of, more than 40% of the world population. This is very important that in our area, people, government, and engineers are very much pay attention how to use less energy, how to use consume less energy. The very important one thing, the answer is insulation. The mechanical insulation, I think that is a very important that we can see the very good future and growth, continued growth. I think everybody here, we have selected the right career and right business to be in this mechanical engineering, and also that's why I'm here. So I think that is what my general idea, my general view. Thank you. Tom.
Thank you. Thank you. Marta, please.
Yeah.
Next.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Ron, for inviting me today. I come from Italy, so I'm more, so to say, comfortable talking about the European maybe market in general, but we have established in the US 15 years ago, so I'm trying to give my opinion in this matter, what I've seen around the world so far. Much was already said. We do believe as well that the green energy trend is not just a fashion trend, something like temporary, but we do all believe in our organization that is the future for few reasons which are actually facts. The first is that the people in the world are growing and very fast, everybody knows. The second is that the consumption, energy consumption per person is increasing a lot too. We are all very dependent today, more than probably a few decades ago, on devices, electronic devices, on comfort. We have a middle class growing in very populated countries like China, mentioned by you just before. And so, in general, of course, the energy consumption, it is growing very fast. So, we do believe that everything you can do in order to save the energy, being that per person, being that so generally in the total, has to be done. And mechanical insulation plays already a very big role in this sense. As many of you know, Europe is, I think, one of the continents, or the continent which is more aware about this, and the regulation in Europe are quite strict in this sense. For example, we do have in the cryogenic insulation specs normally the 50 kg or 50 kg per cubic meter densities, which has, of course, a mechanical performance, but also an insulation performance, while in US, normally I see lower densities being in the specs. So Europe is very much concerned about this, and this is made happen in the market also through the regulations and norms. In both in the commercial and civil building industry and the industrial. I don't speak longer about the commercial because we are not that much in that business, but in Europe is for sure the civil building industry also very much concerned about saving energy in everybody's home, which is one of the biggest piece of the cake of the energy consumption totally. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you. Let's see who we got here. Patrick, please.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. as you know right away, noticed right away, I'm French. At Armacell, we have as a global company, we have a kind of a different challenge. If we look worldwide, what's happening, we are present in 33 countries. We have 23 factories in the world. We see actually pretty similar situation. And maybe let me focus on that and see how we address that challenge. What we see is for the people in the mechanical insulation or technical insulation is that you are definitely in the right job. There is more and more everywhere in the world an understanding that after doing all the work on the insulation on the building envelope, now the insulation of equipment that use any kind of energy are the next big revolution for the next 10 years. And instead of doing what we have done since the 50s, where people that were using a lot of energy in their industry use the material for all, the existing materials, we see a new generation of engineers. We see a new generation of specifier coming, and using modern tools are able to modelize what's happening in those equipment. And of course, by doing this, they raise a requirement. They want to have not only thermal insulation, they want to have acoustic insulation, they want to have mechanical protection of the equipment. As a reminder, you know that in average, the insulation accounts for 1% of the cost of the total equipment. So if with that 1%, you can achieve a longer lifetime, you can achieve a better performance, everybody is ready to put a bit more value in that activity. So how do you face a challenge like that? And I think it's important for us, as we saw this trend everywhere, we have decided to invest quite heavily into training. So today, Armacell has 11 technical academies through the world. We train anywhere between 7,000 to 8,000 people every year. The last one we opened was in Japan. We do provide that service also in the US. And what we see is it's part of the role of a supplier as a provider of system and solution to help this transition. On the top of that, we see in some countries also a generation transition, where we see more and more young contractors, people coming on the market, where the experienced people are retiring. And that's make even more important, that aspect on our side, to invest that. And today, as a company, we invest as much in training our own associate, our distribution partner, or our contractor partner, than we spend on R&D. To show you how important it is for us. And for us, it's a real must to do if we want to keep developing this trade and making sure that we can create the value that all the users are expecting from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Don, please.
Thank you, Ron. Good morning, everyone. I am honored to be here on behalf of the team from Aspen Aerogels. This NIA conference comes at a vital time, I think, a time marked by certain challenges for the industry, a time when our industry has become even more important, I think, to our end users, a time when being a participant in the industry has become more interesting, a time when our industry, no doubt, has become more dynamic, and I think most importantly, a time of innovation and value creation for our industry. We believe the desire by end users to conserve energy and to save money and to meet new policies and shifting regulations is driving this innovation. We know there's a moral component to conservation. We know there's a money component to conservation. And what's interesting, I think, for all of our companies is that we're really operating at this sort of very interesting intersection of those things. We also believe that the industry will become yet more dynamic when, and maybe it's better to say if and when, a price is placed on carbon. It or moves in that direction will be, I think, a real game changer for our industry. Our end users will be trying to do the right thing. They will try to foster growing and profitable businesses. And they'll try to respond to these shifts in regulation. And we, as members of NIA, will have a significant role to play in helping these end users do the right thing, create profitable businesses or maintain profitable businesses, and really respond to these shifts of policy and regulation. These responsibilities to end users will also fuel continued technology advancements, new products, new services, better, faster ways of getting the job done. This is why we believe we're in the midst of a unique time of innovation and value creation for our industry. I think these responsibilities also point to the importance of NIA and to the valuable work done by NIA leadership and the committee members. And I know we're all very grateful to our colleagues for that good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. I get the opportunity to walk around. It's a lot easier for me to ask questions when I can see the panelists from down here, so I'm going to walk around. You don't need to see me anyway. You need to look at them. One of the questions that our industry always asks and always wants to know, especially the every facet, contractors, distributors, is growth. What do we see as far as the industry and growth percentages? As you may or may not know, NIA has done a survey for a number of years trying to project growth in a 2-year interval. We understand that projecting growth is always a crystal ball, and some crystal balls are clearer than others. But NIA recently, in their survey, indicated that they were seeing a 7% growth factor in the total mechanical insulation industry in 2017. Do you feel that number is still achievable, or do you think that those numbers are low or high? Ted, what's your feeling?
Well, first I'll be more specific about the industrial market, because that's what we know best.
Great.
I think we had about a 5% growth in the 2015 total year. I think 16 will be similar, but there's some questions out there in that growth number. First, I think there's great opportunities in the chemical businesses due to low natural gas, but the rest of the market appears to be slowing down. We had a presentation yesterday that sort of confirmed that. There are, however, as we've all commented, opportunities to maintain a higher growth rate by promoting our products and translating that into benefits for the customers. So I think it is achievable, to answer your question, but it's going to take our effort to do it. Otherwise, we'll fall short.
What about a little bit longer term? What are you looking at 5 years out? Do you see sustained growth, or?
Personally, I think we're seeing a period where we've been through a very, very long expansion in the U.S. The rest of the world's been through a little bit more of a contraction period. The good news is today the rest of the world has become more stable and starting to grow at more stable rates, which will help us for the next few years, certainly. So will low energy prices. But I think then there's going to be a period of correction somewhere in the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay. Patrick, how about you? What are your feeling on growth rates?
Clearly, we are moving into a kind of a slow growth world in a lot of places in the world. So having 2 to 4% today is almost being optimistic in a lot of places. But I don't think this matters that much. In a way, we are describing that it's a market base. So you're talking about the growth on the market base. I think what's much more important is the value creation you can achieve. In those times, the critical point is to make sure that we work on the value, not on the quantity. So, and we all have been through the cycles. You know, there is a good time, bad time. What we have learned in those different cycles in the last, so we had a very long, good, positive cycle between 2002 and 2007, 2008. But Outside of that, the people in the trade since now 20, 30 years have always been going through those cycles. And what we have learned in those cycles is every time the same. The ones that are able to create more value for the existing business are the ones that keep growing. And I think that's something we need to really focus on. We will not be helped by the market in the coming 2 to 3 years, despite all of the predictions we see. Everybody is very optimistic, but every 6 months, everybody goes down and say again, well, next year will be better, but this year is going to be a bit low. And I think that's part of the kind of game we are in right now. And it means that we need to go back to what we know how to do well in those times, which is creating value.
Great. Mark, what do you see in Europe?
Well, as we said before, I think that it's going to grow in general in the mid-long term, and I share quite some opinions with Patrick, meaning that those who are able to innovate and to enhance the performances of the products, or anticipating, if it's possible, the needs of the market, those are going to grow much faster, and some technologies might also be replaced by some others. But I do believe that the world is a bit different, like Europe is recovering from this, so to say, crisis slowly. But Patrick, you're French, right? So I believe that Europe is not a union as it is supposed to be, and not having a common strategy, an energy common strategy, for example, we are very weak compared to the United States, which is a real country. This is probably making this recovery slower. And as Patrick mentioned, this affects also, of course, the industry. And there is this maybe lack of optimism, and we're talking about investments. And investments, they need people to see the return of their investment in a reasonable time frame. So this is a bit, I think, what's slowing down. But in the long term, medium long term, I'm quite positive that this industry is going to grow.
Okay. Don, what you?
So maybe my take on the question, I might just talk a little bit about sort of the shifts of the market that relate to growth. And we're a newer and smaller company, so the denominator is a little smaller for us, and it's easy to grow off that, easier to grow off of that denominator almost no matter what the market does within reason. So what we have seen are major shifts, from our upstream part of our focus, and for our company upstream is subsea type work in the oil sands. So there's been a fairly major shift away from that, as we all know, for the price of oil, and moved very much to the downstream and midstream, because there have been some nice LNG opportunities as well. And for us, again, that's our refinery work and our petrochemical work. So those parts of our business are growing, relatively dramatically. I mean, we've grown the company almost 30% per year since 2008. Again, off of a very small number, so it's a little easier to be independent of what's happening in the macro market. I would also say that we've seen significant geographic shifts. We manufacture here in the United States, but we export nearly 70% of our product, and we've seen major shifts geographically, certainly away from places like Brazil, which was an interesting and important part of our mix a couple of years ago, and Asia's been extremely strong for us, really our largest region at this point. And the U.S., of course, manufacturing is so competitive here that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here in the U.S. The other area where we're anticipating some shift, and I think we all have our own opinions about this, but the shift between project work and maintenance work. We've had a majority of our work I would call project-oriented over the course of the past 2 or 3 years, and we're anticipating as we work our way through 2016 and certainly into 2017 that shift will occur towards a greater preponderance of maintenance work than projects.
Okay. What, please?
Okay, thank you. Most of the gentlemen and ladies have talked about the growth of the industry already. But in fact, since we are present and export to all over the world, so we have some information that want to share about the industrial, the mechanical installation growth rate. Normally, the growth rate of our industry is approximate nearly 2 times of the GDP. So each country have a different GDP growth. You can see in America at Trade, he mentioned that this year, or last year, 5%, right? Mm-hmm. And this year, we expect 5%. And in the GDP of the world now is about average 3%. So we expect 5 to 6% growth in our industry. But in many areas, because of the oil industry, like Middle East, maybe the growth rate is quite slow. But anyway, like I just have a news last week that Saudi Arabia need 1 million homes in the next 10 years. Imagine that is how big for the market. And China, normally if their industry, if their GDP is 6.5 to 7%, so that means that the market will be growth in the mechanical industry more than 10%. So many people here is eager or exciting about go to China. But the market there is very competitive. And India, they expect to have 5%, 6-7% growth GDP. Again, we expect more than 10% market, the industrial, mechanical installation. That is a very big market there. So in our Asian market, there may be 4-5%. So overall, the industry in the world, we expect that 2016 will be 5-6%, which is divided by each country. Some country that facing the oil import, the net oil import country will have a higher growth. The next oil export will suffer. But in America, I think for our industry, for our company here, we're doing quite well. Every year we have 10-20% growth. The reason is very important that we have to offer some different, some innovative product. I think that all the participants here, the most important thing is how we can offer something different, something new, and something better. That is very important for our industry. And we think that everybody can enjoy this 5% cake, but somebody may get more and somebody may get less. This is all because of the innovation. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, several of you mentioned the oil pricing. Price of oil now is probably going to be, in the new norm is going to be 35 to 45, is what a lot of economic forecasts say. In the United States, for sure, and I think you mentioned the oil sands in Canada and so forth, we've definitely seen a drop-off in refining type business. But because of the U.S. economy going up, anyway, we have seen consumer spending going up. So the chemical industry appears to be rather robust in comparison specifically to the refining industry or the oil industry. Do you see any specific industry segment growth, LNG, chemical business, any specific industry segments over the next 2 years growing rapidly, more than others? Don?
2 years is a pretty short time frame, but I would just say that, I mentioned earlier that manufacturing is so competitive here in the United States, and in part it is because of our low natural gas prices, and that is driving a lot of these businesses. So we're anticipating that we will see significant manufacturing build and ethylene plants, and these are very large opportunities for us all. And we're seeing those centrally here in the United States. And again, I think it's purely driven on the very, very competitive natural gas prices that we have and market that we have for these products.
Okay. How about you, Patrick? Do you see that?
Well, we see different segments. The chemical industry didn't invest much in the last 20 years, so now they're coming to a point where they ought to make more money and start to revise a little bit their investment policy. We see that in a lot of different countries. One of them is the US. In all the catastrophic situation of the oil and gas industry today, a lot of projects are stopped. LNG is probably the only place where we see a project keep flowing, and there is a pipeline which seems to be still robust enough to do some good business in the coming 18 months. And now we see different type of industry looking at insulation, not only on thermal but also acoustic. We see a lot of things happening in transportation, in urban transportation as well as the transportation for passengers, like buses and things like that, which is more OEM business than contractor business. What we've seen also is an evolution to consider differently based, especially it's driven by Europe, but I think it will come here early enough, is that considering how do you use energy in building now, this is becoming a recurrent theme, which oblige people to think about how they have built their own equipment. And in HVAC, for example, we see quite a strong tendency to refurbish installations that are 10, 12 years old in a much more aggressive way in order to be able to benefit from a very different regulatory situation. And I personally believe this is a push we are going to see a little bit everywhere. As the focus move away from keeping the energy close into the building, people are going to start to look at how to use energy really, because this is the next way of using it better. And we see some trends here that will be midterm trends coming probably in the next 3 to 4 years.
Okay. Marta?
Yeah, I do believe in the industrial industry, the LNG is the one which is gonna, in this short time that you mentioned, like 2-3 years, is what is gonna grow again. There are many other segments. I think the green energy topic is spread out in many different ways. So the cold chain, the logistics is getting more and more complex. People are moving much more, but goods are also moving very much, groceries as well. The entire African continent is where a lot of food goes wasted. There is not enough, and what there is goes wasted because the cold chain is missing. The same in India, the same in many other highly populated countries. So I believe that beside the industrial insulation and in the niche of the LNG, there is the entire cold chain due to the improvement also of the logistics and more exchange among the countries. This is also due to the globalization, to the harmonization of the habits of people. You find Italian food everywhere, French foods, you find everything all over the world, and this behind that there is a very efficient logistics, meaning insulation and cold chain. The other is, as we mentioned already, the building industry. In Europe, I think, I mentioned Europe because I think there is enough people who knows much more than me about the US markets. But in Europe, as you know, we have very old buildings all over. Italy is probably the oldest in the world. And I think there is also a big opportunity to develop new technologies to make those old buildings energy efficient. They are not. They are definitely, very often they're not. And I think a lot of innovation is missing there and preventing to renovate instead of building new.
Good, thank you. What?
Okay. For the next 2, 3, or 5 years, I see many chance, many opportunity. Of course, we still do not know very sure what is oil and gas industry here. If one day the oil and gas coming back to $80 or $100, I think this industry will be booming again. But anyway, there's a lot of new building, a lot of new urbanization. Like in America, there's 4, 5 big cities that is growing very fast, like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston, or even in Florida area, which is account for more than a quarter or 20 or a quarter of the population of the in the city. So they need a lot of new house, new home, new building, new shopping arcade, shopping center, and etc. That which is need a lot of this installation, a lot of installation, and also I think a lot of new industry will be moving back to America, like the clean room for electronic or for chemical industry, which is moved away 20 years ago, and I hope that it will be moved back here, and the food industry. And of course, a lot of buildings are getting old, so you need a refurbish, rebuild the industry. So this is what I see the industry in America. And at the same time, you see the rest of the world, like in China, and they build millions and millions of flats of the housing every year. And I talked before that Saudi Arabia or some Middle East country, the population growth is so fast, so they need a lot of housing. In Africa, if the oil is coming back, the commodity price is getting better. Africa is another area that have a high growth rate. And at the same time, in ASEAN, in many areas, and also in Europe, I think with a lot of the population in Europe increased very fast, because you have welcomed a lot of Middle East or Syrian refugees. There is 1 million of them in Europe. This also need a lot of the new housing, the new facility to accommodate all of them. This is, I see, is another potential for any new business, any mechanical installation, or anything that can help, can do for the energy saving. Of course, after protocol meeting of global warming in Paris, a lot of countries pay a strong attention for the energy conservation, and in order to reduce carbon dioxide emission. This is one of my comment. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ted?
I'll restrict my comments to the U.S. market or North American market. It's interesting the impact of oil and gas has had in the past when we've been a major importer of oil, over 50%, sometimes close to 60%. Reduction in price has been very, very beneficial. This time, we actually import about 25% of our energy products, and we also export energy. So the impact, number one, took a long time. The price of oil had to get down well below $50 before the consumers felt strong enough. And it's sort of like a double-edged sword, because all of a sudden we had a big oil and gas industry. And the impact of that slowing down because of lower prices and our cost of extraction was painful. I talked to people in Oklahoma, Kansas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas. But in our industry, I think it's created some, and everybody's commented on this, some great opportunities, especially in the chemical business. We are now, because of natural gas, our production of natural gas, low-cost platform for most, the methanols, the ethylenes, the olefins of the world. So I think it's had pluses and minuses right now.
Each of you have mentioned the energy conservation as an opportunity for growth of our industry. At least I think I can speak for a lot of people in this room. Insulation still is considered the Rodney Dangerfield, if you will. We get no respect in many markets for energy conservation. We always talk about the infamous light bulb and all of the advertising and promotion of the light bulb and the tax credits and so forth. With energy conservation, we all agree is going to be important. Any suggestions that you might have as to how we elevate the importance that mechanical insulation can play in energy conservation to the decision makers, to the facility owners, to the decision makers, to the budget people, to the CEOs, the CFOs, the COOs. How do we elevate that message to those individuals for us to get our due recognition? Patrick, any ideas?
I think that the discussion has shifted in the last year. So if you are in insulation science a long time like I do, you know that the payback on purely energy conservation is not that great, first thing. So we sell that, we have all kind of models, but this was the driver at the beginning at a very high oil price or gas price. This is not the driver anymore. I think there was a shift maybe that happened in the last 5 years which is not acceptable anymore for the general public, is wasting resources. So people are not considering anymore only the fact of energy as conservation as such, but about the fact that we use limited resources to produce things, and they are as much interested as the way we use energy, but also the way we use steel, copper, whatever it is as raw materials, and making sure that we are not building to waste or to scrap 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And I think this shift we see everywhere and more. The next generation is much more centered on the fact that if we do something, let's do it well, and let's make it durable. And I think we, as an industry, have the solution for that. If you look at what we do, and again, when I was talking about value creation, it's important to consider things like corrosion under insulation, factors that are basically limiting the life of the equipment. We spend quite a bit of time on training and money on training, trying to convince our partners how to sell a durable solution. This is the trick when we say creating value. The discussion on energy conservation, I think, is something that more or less everybody understands. It doesn't mean they are all able to do the calculation that they need to do and so on. But I think we're shifting from that, and that's make the situation today much more exciting. This is what's going to create value for us. How can we contribute by the quality of the insulation we provide, thermal, acoustic, or whatever, or mechanical eventually, mechanical protection. Insulation is a super packaging for some very expensive equipment. How do we provide those industry with a clear understanding of what they can do to increase the lifetime of their equipment using our solutions?
Does that message need to get to the facility owners or to the designers, or both?
Both. We spend quite a bit of money trying to convince both.
Don, you got any comments on that?
Well, I like Patrick's answer, actually. There were, I think, maybe three approaches, and just to state the obvious, maybe these very low energy prices are not the friend of conservation programs right now. But I think maybe three pathways. One is policy and government, and relying on our political leaders to make judgments about this and create policies that lead us in a good direction. Economics, again, trying to get the economics to work. And again, as Patrick pointed out, it can be challenging in different aspects. And then third, I think there's a sort of a human nature to want to do the right thing. And I'm not sure which of those three points will win the day, but I think the day needs to be won. And in the end, I think it will be all three of those things. It's easy to be jaded and cynical about at least one of them, And
We agree with that.
but you know, obviously, it needs to, especially here in the United States, it needs to improve.
Well, speaking of that, one of the things that we're seeing more and more is what I refer to as holistic code development, specifically in the building market, in the commercial building market, where new buildings are being looked at in the United States anyway, and I think some in Europe as well, for an energy code for the design of a building for the whole building, not just for the prescriptive measures like windows or lighting or insulation and those type of things, but an energy code for the whole building. The discussions we've had so far, it seems like the insulation is not getting near the dues, the mechanical insulation portion. The envelope, the roof, certainly is getting a lot of attention. But the mechanical insulation does not appear to be getting it, and there is some fear that we could get lost in all of that. Have you seen any of that at all, Ted?
Oh, yeah, I agree with you. I think that, and I agree with everyone else about the things we can do to promote our business and educate people, promote our energy. But I think codes are an important part of that. The International Code Council just adopted what they call the Water and Energy Efficiency and Green Codes. This is part of the holistic effort. That's happening in Europe today. In England, for example, in the UK, they have a code for hot water insulation in homes and commercial buildings, saving energy, saving water. I think we as an industry have to get more involved in the code process. Owners, talking to them, educating them on the long-term benefits, yes, it's beneficial, but a lot of people say, well, if I don't have to do it, I'm not going to do it. And so I think if we can direct our efforts, part of our efforts there, as well as our education outreaches and things of that nature, then we'll drive our business a little bit better.
Now, Marta, you got any comment on that, on codes?
Yeah, well, in civil building industry in Europe has been, in Italy I think is European in general, has been mandatory, ready for a few years, I think 10 years so far, to have energy certification for the building every time you have a transaction, being that you rent an apartment, so to say, or you sell or you buy. It's mandatory among the documentation to have this energy certificate released by somebody qualified for that. Of course, everybody is complaining because it's one more cost, one more paper, and God knows how much paper we do have to handle in Italy and in France as well. So, but it's also true on the other side that it's creating a certain culture. So when you go and buy a building and it's classified F or G and not A+ and not B, you actually know what you are buying, you're more aware, and you can estimate also the cost, because it's very true what people at this table have been saying so far. It's also an economical sustainability issue. So it has to be also economically sustainable. And this is what I see in the European market happening, and has been like 10, 15 years, and it's starting to. So people are investing more in replacing the windows, maybe with insulated windows inside, or rollades, or making the coat around the building, and such.
Brock, do you have any comments on that?
Okay. I think every one of us need to get a higher growth in our industry. Of course, in our mechanic installation, the most important is we should have higher R value, a thicker insulation. Of course, this argument from the investor that, okay, they do not want to pay more. But actually, this is for long-term payback. It's not too long nowadays because the interest is quite low. But anyway, you know that the green building code, green building regulation is spread to many countries in the world. Many years ago, no one cared in India that they need green building code, or in China, they just try to save even single cent they can do. But nowadays, the regulation, the specification have requests, the energy conservation, the building, green building, friendly, and this is for important for the next generation, our world. So that many area now the practice of this green building. So that's why the industry growth 100% from the GDP. You see, normally it should be more or less same as GDP growth, but the industry. But I see in many areas, like in America, for example, many years ago when we first come in, the insulation is a 3/8 thickness for split unit or for the air condition. But now in many areas it's go up to 1 inch thick. You can see that how big for the insulation. And the new development of many new refrigerant system which is offer much lower temperature. For example, we are going away from R22 to other lower refrigerant. Like in Japan, now most of the refrigeration system is a minus 56 centigrade, that is 80 or 90 Fahrenheit. So the insulation is automatically they need a higher thickness. So that is our industry. For example, we are in the insulation. We always want to sell more. But in the ordinary business, it's not so easy. So the new specification, the new regulation, and the green building code will help us.
Okay. I have one more question, then I'm going to open it up to the audience here. Several of you have mentioned maintenance as a great opportunity for the installation market. I think that everybody in this audience would agree with that maintenance is a great opportunity. Unfortunately, we see that installation continues to be forgotten about once it's installed. And in many cases, unless it's maybe a cryogenic application where a damage to insulation is critical and it's immediately fixed, what we see in a lot of other applications where insulation is not timely fixed or fixed correctly. And as we all know, we've said in the NIA world, we've said that 10 to 30% of all exposed mechanical insulation exposed is damaged within 1 to 3 years. And as we go around the country talking to owners and engineers, they seem to agree with that. No one has said we're crazy in using those estimates. If anything, we're probably low. But yet we continue to see that insulation is not being considered for the long-term effect. If you will, potential energy loss, corrosion of the pipe, processing of the system itself. Obviously, if the insulation is not doing its job, the process itself is not working as possibly as originally designed. Any suggestions as to how we might get owners again, facility owners, to bring that level of importance of insulation up to understand the long-term ramifications of not timely and properly maintaining insulation systems? Don?
Wow.
I didn't say this was going to be easy.
You know, again, Aspen Aerogels has been around a pretty short period of time, and our products have been around a pretty short period of time. So my observation of that period of time, we really introduced our products in the market in 07, 08, 09, is that it does require a teaching process or a learning process, and it's our responsibility to do that with the end users, but also relying on our distributors and our contractors to be our partners in that process. And the interesting statistic that I read just recently is the percentage of maintenance work today that's going on in refineries in the United States, planned versus unplanned. We're at pretty much record levels of unplanned maintenance right now. So they're running these facilities hard, and they're making money, and in many cases could be the only parts of their business, their integrated business, that are making money. And so they're loath to take them down, and we're seeing that. So the percentage of unplanned maintenance, I think it kind of confirms your point in a way. But again, I think the burden is on companies like ours and our partners through the supply chain to make sure we make those points known.
You see the responsibility of the manufacturer to create the specification? Is that definitely what you believe is
certainly to
one of the major
participate?
roles?
Certainly to participate in that process.
And the distributor contractor is to support your efforts in that regard?
Yes.
Yeah. Patrick?
It's quite a complex question, and I think the reaction is really cultural in different areas of the world. What we have tried to do is offer with the help of our partner, distributors or contractors, trying to run some health check on certain industries. So we go there, we do it as a kind of a complementary follow-up of what we have done. The problem we hit very quickly is that it's very expensive to maintain. So, and again, if it doesn't stop the installation today, the benefits are not seen as they should. So once you have made them aware that there is a number of places where things need to be addressed, or you manage to put it in the regular maintenance planning of the factory or the industry, or it doesn't happen until the thing breaks down. So it's a question of awareness, a question of it's not an easy answer. I think every case, it's a case-by-case situation. And I'm sure some of the people in the room here have very long-standing, very good relationship with some industries where they manage to do that because they are trusted, they have the right relationship. And for some other, it's much more difficult because simply people don't see the value. So it's we still at a time where it's difficult. What we do in a preventive manner is usually on big projects, on a number of big projects, we supply a kind of maintenance manual on the insulation part when required, especially in cryogenic or in some of those situations. But that's something that goes very quickly on the shelf, and a couple of years down the road, if you visit them again, you need to help them to take it out and read it again and look at it again. But I think it's small steps. So we are not as mature as we should do in a number of our industries about that.
It is definitely a challenge. For all of us that have called on maintenance managers, you go to a maintenance manager and talk about the installation needs repairs, and you're like talking to the choir. Yes, we know that. Go talk to the people upstairs. They give us the money, give us the budget, give us the direction to do that. So that is the challenge, but many of you have said about looking at installation differently, talking about long-term effect, long-term selling instead of short-term. Unfortunately, maintenance today is a bottom line expense and not looked at as a maintenance, as a capital investment, unfortunately. In the interest of time here, I'm going to first of all open up to any questions from the audience that you might have for any of our panelists. Again, if it's any specific product questions for each of them, you'll have to address that differently. We don't want to get into individual product discussions here. Any questions from the audience at all? It's hard for me to see with that light on. So any questions out there? All right, I just keep going then. That's good. I like asking questions. Yes.
I guess, and it was addressed a little bit, but I think it's still a concern, at least here in the United States, about how do we get the message out? How do we get the value of insulation to the end user? And I think part of it, was a partnership. I think Don mentioned it and Patrick mentioned it a little bit, that we've got to, team up as contractors, manufacturers, distributors, the whole group. But I'm still wondering, how do we, if there's any other idea you have that we can really get this message out. I mean, I think we've got to figure out how to do that on a bigger stage. So just curious if you got any other thoughts on that.
Okay. Ted, how about you? Start you. How do we get to
That-
the owner? How do we get to the owner?
Actually, that was a very complex question. I agree with my associates up here. And Kenny's point is right to it, because it is very difficult to get to the right decision makers. You know, we go out and there's not a week that goes by that we're not doing presentations, lunch and learns and things like that with directly or with our partners in the market. I'm not sure how you do it other than just old-fashioned effort and getting out there and making sure everybody in this room has people that are qualified to do that. Go through the NIA training programs, become certified, so you can talk intelligently to people, try and get to decision makers, because as you said, I think, the maintenance guys will agree with you, but maintenance, when you get to the CFO, is different. So if you can drive your discussions upward, if you have an opportunity, you'll have more success on that. But it's just a old-fashioned block and tackling effort of getting it done.
There's been several comments made about the younger generation and so forth. There's not a lot of education at the trade school level or the university or college level about the value of insulation, if any. Thermodynamics is talked about quite a bit. I'm talking of the United States, but very little about thermal insulation per se. Would an effort like that help over time by getting more and more people educated as to the value of insulation, both short-term and long-term? Would that help in those efforts?
Yes, and I think that one of the things we could do is offer more courses and certifications that I know we have some at NIA. We've even thought about doing that to educate people, to give them continuing education. But if we can get that into curriculum and provide, but we're going to have to provide the curriculum. They're not going to just do it, because quite frankly, they don't understand it, the educational community. We hire engineers, and they come in, and we have to teach them about insulation.
I'll ask a question. A question of, you mentioned old-fashioned selling, old-fashioned education. The millennium is coming up in the world, the electronic communication, electronic education. Do you see that as a possible means to getting it out there faster, of electronic education as the value of insulation, long-term, short-term? Marta?
For me?
No, Marta.
Yeah.
Please.
Well, definitely. We strongly believe that education and introducing this kind of topics more and more in colleges, or organizing also sessions with professors or students or PhDs, it's one of the right way to follow. And of course, the support of electronics is today amazing. And this leads to having a very low budget and very good ideas and get to the goal faster and cheaper. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Rod, please.
Yes. I think that the industry, we need a really more professional training for all the end user. Of course, nowadays, the end user, what they need is how to get the material or insulation that can do it fast, can do it correctly, and can no need to have a really professional, because Trey said that nowadays there is a short of the professional. So it is a duty, it is a job of the producer to get a more and more training. Before, I think that the industry, mostly we are doing is what they call, in America, they call, dog and pony, right? Just pony show, just like, yeah, dog and pony show, just say, okay, my product is so good, and blah, blah, blah. But nowadays, you need a much better professional training in order to offer the best product, Nowadays is a new generation that people need to have a good product, easy to install and safe, and also is a overall cost must be right. It's not mean that you can sell the cheapest product, but it's not function well. So this is very important, and it's also a benefit. Your people, your industry, the installer must introduce to the owner, the project owner, that for a long-term benefit. This is a very important in my idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Ted, you mentioned in your opening comments one of your concerns was the availability of labor. Do you still see that as a challenge for our industry?
Well, I see it as a challenge for all industries, and ours in particular, because we have a lot of trade crafts within our industry. But as business evolves, even those trade crafts require a higher degree of education. I can tell you from personal experiences, we interview high school graduates from Miami-Dade County, and 18 out of 20 are functionally illiterate. How can they operate a CNC machine? It's simple. So I think that is a challenge, and I think that's one that has to be addressed at the policy levels of government, whether it be local or national.
Have you all experienced any labor shortages? If you're hearing your contractors talking about labor shortages? Marta?
Well, the qualified labor force is a question. But I think that said that the trend is all over the world the same for the green energy and energy saving. I think all over the world it's a very different maturity among the different areas. This in the end user, so the consumer side, but also in the industrial side, the decision makers. So education works, helps, norms, they go in this direction, of course, but this is linked also to having, in certain countries, a very tough time to find qualified people. That's quite normal. The other thing is that I think it's not very popular to say maybe, but who are the decision makers in the industrial mechanical insulation? That's also a very big question mark. As long as we talk about Western countries, I think it's more homogeneous. But when we start to go to more East, Middle East or Far East, then I think it's totally another maturity and knowledge, of course, which is all linked together, both from the end user and the contractors or the customers at the end of the big projects. And so the question is also who is the decision maker and which goals he has. Is that a return in 2-3 years? It's like a saving. Is like saving because the maintenance and the insulation is not a short-term return investment, in my opinion. So you need to have, it depends what is actually who is behind and which is the target the decision maker has.
Okay.
Ron, if I may stay on that topic, our company just over the last year or so went through an exercise to site our second manufacturing plant, and as I said earlier, we export significantly from the U.S., about 70% of our products. So our first instinct was to look abroad, of course, for locations for our plant, and we had a long list of criteria to help us make those judgments, and those were energy costs, of course, raw material supplies, good shipping, intellectual property protection, a whole host of different topics, and of course labor. And we ended up choosing the United States to locate our second plant, in part because, again, energy and raw materials and good shipping were robust. But labor was at the lower end of our scale in the U.S. In the sense that it's relatively expensive, and And it really requires a lot of training, right, from, you know, sort of from the ground up in a way. And so again, just one data point on going through an exercise like that on a global basis.
And I have a question dealing with the contractor segment. We know that every contractor puts on all the insulation correctly every time. I'm trying to be political here, guys. But I'm sure that you've experienced where the application has not been put in properly and has caused problems. Do you see that increasing, decreasing? Do you see any change in that out there? That's part of the question. The other part would be, what do you see that NIA could do to help in that regard? Patrick?
It comes back to what we discussed on the training. I mean, to give you an idea, the idea we have at RMSL is probably to hire people more on the attitude than the skills, and we train for the skills. If you look at what we do, especially in the United States, most of the people we have been going through extensive training on product, on equipment, on different things. We have created what we call a demand creation team, where we have experts talking to other experts. We understand that this industry has been built on what we call at RMSL the magical triangle: specifier, distributor, and contractor. We need to take care of each of them. And if you look at what a professional at RMSL need to go through to be able to be on the field talking to you guys, they have been going through anywhere between 15 to 20 training modules. They are among the best professionals you have in that trade. And that's what we need to do. We cannot simply, if we want to make sure that we have the right level of support for the contractor, the right level of support for the distribution, the right level of support for the specifier, we need to spend the money. We cannot do it cheap. And every time we go on a major problem or we are called back to look at things that have been done, of course, by other people, the reality is always the same: lack of support, lack of understanding. This is the responsibility of the guy providing the solution, and we are absolutely fully committed to that. And that's mean money, and for that you need to be able to generate that money in order to support the industry. We are leading in our segment. We believe that the future of the industry in that direction needs to be supported by us. Otherwise, it will not happen.
Insulation, specifically pipe insulation, still has the reputation that anybody can install it. Unfortunately, that's the case, and many people are still installing it wrong, not closing up gaps, not sealing it properly, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, the education of that. Ted, what do you recommend on that? What do you see as far as improper application?
Well, of course, it's never the manufacturer's product that's
I understand.
failing.
I understand.
I mean, that's a given to start, but
I didn't say that. Remember that.
I agree.
Thank you, Marta. No, I think it is an issue, and we see it not as frequently as I think some segments do, because we're in more of the cryogenic, the ammonia refrigeration, where it's critical. But I think it is a matter of education, and I agree with my associate down there that we have to invest in that. We have to get out, educate people to the importance of doing that long term, and what happens and why it happens. I mean, people, if they understand why something should be done, they're more likely to do it. So I think it is an education process. I think that NIA can help, but all of us, especially manufacturers, need to get out there too, because we do work on those things, those specifications and installation guides, because that's who everybody looks at the end of the day.
Marta?
Yeah, you have tough questions. No, in general, I think that everybody is more aware of the waste. So everybody wanna fight the waste in all its features. And energy is one thing. My thinking is also in the specification process, or we don't have anything better so far in order to save energy than mechanical insulation, right? Then it could be one solution or the other one, but as long as we don't have better, I think this is the way to follow. And the specification should take in consideration the performances of the products. It happens to me to see that there are specifications asking for performances and then those being changed locally because the local manufacturer doesn't reach those. Sorry to say, but that's the truth in some places in the world. And so what is actually the maturity, again, of those specification countries? This is not happening in US, it's not happening in Europe, but it's true that it's happening elsewhere. And we have quite some work to do, and all the questions we made today are linked to each other, from education, from specs, from talking more and working together, everybody, like manufacturers, because we do invest or not invest in innovation, we can or cannot bring to the table new products, more performing, and also facing the thing of installation problems. The waste is along all the process, not just the waste of energy. This is after you have made the installation and after you have the maintenance and anything, but how much energy consumption do you need to manufacture the mechanical insulation product? How much do you need to install? How much waste do you have before in the process of manufacturing, the process of installation, so during and afterwards, when you are at regime and you expect to have performances, and therefore you need to maintain also your mechanical insulation solution. So it's very confusing, I know, but it's a bunch of ideas put together.
Maybe if I can add something on that to support what Martha is saying, what we see coming in some countries today is a notion for association like NIA looking at what we call the total impact reduction. We're actually applying what has been developed by some of the things done in the building envelope or some other activities. People start to consider the fact that insulation is not only an energy saving or an energy conservation aspect, it's also related to the impact of the equipment as on the environment, including noise, including time, transportation, and so on. So this notion of total impact reduction is something that starts slowly to make progress, and with the strength of NIA, and I don't know who is at the different committees who could look at that, but this is something you can develop very quickly, which not only use a traditional tool, but make the facility owner or the specifier think about the impact of what we do on the total equipment, which is a very different budget. Again, insulation is only 1% of the total investment. So if you manage to impact the rest of the investment, we have a very different discussion on value creation.
Interesting. Don, you got any comments on the labor? You've got a kind of a unique situation with your material.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the contractor question, training, no doubt. That's a very important part of it. I think even maybe a step before that is this notion of designing your plant. Designing your products such that they're relatively easy to install. Again, from a product form point of view, I think that's also an area that is important. I think the other area, perhaps, and this comes from a network of fabricators, to have the most complicated parts prefabricated in some manner, and again, in terms of having errors in the field, I think that is limited when you do have a good network of fabricators.
Is it the distributor's role or the manufacturer's role to educate the contractor? Who's? Everybody's?
It's everybody's role.
Everybody's role.
But I think manufacturers, for the most part, have to take the lead and driving the more knowledge. And one of the issues is too, if you're going to go out there with that kind of effort, you've got to go out there with accurate, timely information that is non-biased, and say this is actually impart some knowledge. And but I think it's our role primarily, with the support of everybody else. I think, as we said that earlier, all of us.
I think there is a time issue too, if I may. A lot of contractors find normal that when they have trained a guy, the guy doesn't come back to a training for the next 10 years. We accept the fact we change our smartphone every 2 years, but the technology is moving very fast. So, and we see the difficulty as we go back and ask the people and say, you know, that this guy, last time he went to the training academy was 5 years ago. Maybe it's time for him to come back because there's a couple of new things to show and so on. And this is also kind of a understanding we need to develop that things are moving fast in that industry too. So being trained once is not enough.
What? You have some comments?
I think that the NIA, the most important thing is getting more training program, workshop, and offer for, and getting more membership here, because I understand there is 10,000 of mechanical engineer, but I think that we get not much membership, and we need more paper from, not from America. I think you should accept for all from other place of the world, because it's very important. The know-how, the information, nowadays there is a transferring from each area, from Europe, from Asia, from America now, and very important is myself read the what they call installation outlook 30 over years ago. We get a much thicker than today. So anyway, this is what my idea, that you need more know-how information of many parts of the world. Thank you.
I think everybody with the NIA staff and the board of directors would agree we need more information, but you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make that horse drink. That's part of the problem that we have with a lot of the different engineering firms, specifically when it comes to engineering. We continue to find, though, that many, not sure, back to Marty, I'm not sure who the decision maker is, but we continue to see where installation choices are being made on dollars as opposed, short-term dollars as opposed to long-term dollars. That's a problem. They're building a building today and they're getting the money in as cheap as they can, build the building, turn the building, rent the building. They really could care less 20 to 30 years down the road what the answer may be. And in the building sector, when the piping is insulated and it's covered up in the wall, it's a totally different situation than on the industrial market. In the industrial market, most of it's outside or at least exposed where you can see it. You get behind that wall, you never know what's out there. So it's a challenge for that education to get the long term. We're getting close to running out of time here. I want to ask one more time. Any other questions from the audience? Yes.
Real quick for the guys, for the panelists. One of our experiences is there is a real drive in the construction industry, period, to ignore the mechanical insulation contractor. They all believe they can self-perform. Plumbers, refrigeration contractors, maintenance people, they completely forget this. There's whole craft out there called mechanical insulators. How can the mechanical insulation community get the message to the building design and building construction community? You got to use a real insulator. That's part of the failure of the craft.
Just for the benefit of making sure everybody heard the question and the comment. Many people, plumbers, owners, et cetera, seem to be self-performing or believe they can self-perform. Again, insulation's simple. Anybody can put it on attitude. The industry, the question is, I think is what can be done to show those owners that there are professional mechanical insulation contractors out there that can do the work certainly a lot better than someone that just thinks they know the insulation business. Any comments on that? I mean, the self-performing issue is, a lot of it goes through the market channels, how the material goes to market, but there are a lot of people that are self-performing.
Well, I think we can do some things to help. I think you can, if some of us would get active in participating in some of the other association meetings, American Institute of Architects, the Mechanical Engineering Association, and things like that, they're always looking for speakers too, just like we are, to present our case and get back to that education thing and make them a little bit more aware of what the critical issues are and what the impacts of those issues are.
Anyone else on the panel have a comment on that? Patrick?
Well, in some country, we have developed the notion of certified installer. And again, in some country, also you relate that working with a distribution to a number of warranties you can associate to that. But it's not the problem. The problem is in a number of countries, what we see is general contractor stepping in. And usually when the time is tough, those general contractors have not much to do, so they start looking at smaller job sites or mid-sized job sites. And they try to use any guys they have to do the job. They don't care that much. So this is something, again, you need to face case by case. And again, the supplier should be on the side of the distribution and the contractor in this matter, because we all want to have a good reputation and make sure that our solutions are well recognized by the market. We have no interest to have those guys coming in, have no experience, and building something the wrong way. But that's a fight. That's a fact. So we need to, but we need to really cooperate, and I think this is make the magic triangle work. Is that in some of those cases we need to address together and give the proper answer. But it will still exist, and every time the time is tough, you will see the general contractor coming in and do what they do the best, making the price low.
All right. Any other comments from?
Yeah, just quickly. Again, I think the performance at the end is the real key, in my opinion, so that the end user can see really a gain. And I agree that we should all work together in that sense, because the best product, which is applied improperly or vice versa, it doesn't bring to the solution to the end user at the end.
Yeah.
Do you have a comment?
I think that most of the country, the building, the architect, like cosmetic, is more important than the actual healthy body. And you know that they need to build a beautiful looking building, but in fact they forget or they do not pay a very high attention of the M&E system. But in fact, the M&E is the most important, so that we need a lot of educate to let people, to let architect, to let contractor to know that you need a beautiful body, a cosmetic, but you also very much you need a healthy M&E system. This is a NIA's job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we're out of time. That's going to conclude our panel for today. Our panel tomorrow will have another set of executives from our manufacturing sector with a whole different set of questions. For those in here thinking you're going to get the same questions tomorrow, forget it. But we have another panel tomorrow. Please join with me in welcoming and thanking our panelists. Thank you very much. Thank you.